seconds. Okay. Hey, it is Yuri Hauswald with the 6th episode of the ABCs of Sports Nutrition. Thank you for joining us. While all of our prior episodes have focused on ways to nourish our bodies through sports nutrition and healthy whole food eating practices, tonight's episode is going to focus on ways that we can nourish our minds, right? On ways that we can arm ourselves with mental tools to take care of ourselves, ways that we can begin to control our responses to all the adversity that we're all dealing with, right? Because frankly, let's be honest, everybody is being affected by COVID right now in some way, shape, or form. And we could use all the mental tips and tricks, right, to tap into that brain power, the positivity that we have to help us navigate these tricky waters. And I mean that pun intended because of who I am speaking to tonight. Tonight's episode is called Mindfulness Meditation and the Endurance Mind. And it is truly my honor to introduce our two guests tonight. Michelle Evans Chase and Bruckner Chase, who's been a GU athlete for 15 plus years, somewhere around there.
Oh, enough so that you even said long time with capital letters. So it's been a while. From you, yes. That's high praise. Yeah.
Yes, that means we're well aged, Bruckner. We've both been around for a while. So let me just introduce Michelle first. So Michelle is a researcher and stats geek who has been studying mindfulness meditation as a researcher since 2008 and as a practitioner since 2014. She has her PhD in social welfare and is an avid ocean athlete. Her groundbreaking research has been published by the University of Pennsylvania, and she has worked alongside her husband for the past decade, encouraging others to challenge the limits of age and gender in embracing new ocean-based athletic endeavors. Hence my pun about navigating tricky waters. Now, Bruckner Chase, I'm going to run out of breath to read all of the accolades here. I'm not even going to really touch on all of his athletic accomplishments because besides being a very accomplished athlete, both on land and in the ocean, he's the CEO of Ocean Positive, Inc. He's the Surf and Rescue Technical Director for Red Bull. He's a professional lifeguard. He is also the technical advisor for NOAA, National Weather Service in terms of ocean and beach safety. And he's also spent a fair amount of time in American Samoa to provide opportunities to empower that community to positively interact with their ocean. One other thing I want to highlight too is that both of you, I believe, work with spinal cord injury patients, help them rehabilitate and to get them actually out in the water to show them what is still possible. So it is truly my honor to have you guys on tonight as longtime friends, longtime representatives of GU. But what we're going to talk about tonight in terms of mindfulness and meditation is really pertinent right now in our current age. So welcome, Michelle and Bruckner.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's really great to be here. And I think that we want to really interact with everyone who's watching and encourage you to shoot over questions now that we can respond, because we really enjoy the conversational back and forth with all this. And I think that this is an incredible opportunity. I have been working with GU, like Yuri said, for probably 15 years or so, and it really has been a backbone to what I've been able to accomplish in the water and on land, because GU has provided the opportunity to maximize what might have been in me already. And since Michelle had begun studying mindfulness meditation and looking at how that helps alter how I react to high stress or emotional situations, whether it's on land or in the water, in endurance settings, whether it's training or racing, that has become probably one of the more valuable tools for me now to make good decisions that help me achieve whatever goals might be in front of me, whether it's a channel crossing or a first ocean swim or just diving into something that I've never done before. And I think to kind of put all this in context is what Michelle and I have kind of done is, if I sound intelligent, I always say that I'm probably plagiarizing her. She's the scientist at PhD. I just kind of tell the funny stories and hopefully share some of my experiences to kind of bring it home. And I'll say that while some of us might, be mentally tough or not see that as a weakness or a challenge, I think the last several months have shown us all that putting a lot of the stuff that's going on outside of our endurance life or our training life that comes with us. We have a saying with athletes that we work with in the ocean that often the most dangerous thing in the ocean is what we bring with us in our heads from shore. And I would suggest that as we go into a race or training or a training program or plan, often the most detrimental things that can happen during that training experience or that mission is what we bring with us in our head, and how we deal with those challenges. How do we set aside the stuff that's not relevant to that moment and to those decisions really affects whether we feel successful in what we do. And someone a while back asked me, what does success look like to me? And the answer to me is that success to me is peace with any outcome. That I have given everything I can to this, and win, lose, or DNF, or something worse or better, that I'm at peace with the experience. That I feel that represents everything that I could put into it at the time. So it doesn't necessarily come with a trapping. And right now, the trappings of starting lines and finish lines and post-race celebrations and all that, we've lost all that. We don't have it, and we don't know when it's going to come back and what it might look like when it does come back. And so we talk about a lot of the intrinsic or extrinsic motivations to even get out the door and train. It's a matter of really kind of looking internally at what are my goals. And right now, I know for me, the biggest barrier to accomplishing some of those is how I feel about the training and what gets me out the door. And then often in my world, in the ocean environment, in which there are really dangerous things that can happen out there, and we've got some really big surf coming up in the next 2 or 3 days, it's very common and very healthy for me to stand at the beach and look out at the surf and be afraid. That's a good feeling for me, because that further embeds the fact that I need to respect the environment that I'm about to enter into. For others, that might be a mountain, that might be a trail, but for me as an ocean athlete, it's this dynamic, moving body that can crush me literally if I make a wrong decision going into the surf. So for me, being afraid at the beach and then moving through that and making decisions based on what's actually going on. What is going on with the wind, the water temperatures, the weather, the wildlife? What do I know is going to be out there? And not reacting to the fear, but kind of moving through that into an assessment of what's going on. So it's one thing to say, I'm going to be that way. I'm going to be mindful in my training. It's also like saying, I'm going to run a 5K in under 16 minutes. That's easy to do. All you have to do is run 3.1 miles at 5-minute mile pace. It's easy. That's all. If you want to run under 16 minutes for a 5K, all you got to do is hold 5-minute miles. Knowing it and being able to execute it after the first 200 meters are two different things. And what I've learned from Michelle is, while I might be mentally tough in a lot of situations, and I've been doing endurance sports for decades now. I ran my first Ironman when I was 18 years old. So I was always kind of wired to do that. But how do I maximize that innate mental toughness to really make good decisions in even more dynamic situations? And how do I not just know this is how I run this speed, or this is how I get to this finish line or cross this channel, but have I trained every part of my body to be able to respond appropriately to move me towards that goal?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and also, how do you translate that mental toughness into our daily lives right outside of your sports activity right now, which is really relevant. So, I mean, maybe this is a good time to pivot to you, Michelle, to share some of the science behind mindfulness meditation.
So mindfulness has become super popular, and it's a great tool for dealing with just life difficulties in life, challenges. Sadly, what I often miss in a lot of what I see in the media and kind of the popular discourse on mindfulness is how do we become mindful? You know, like the running analogy, just knowing that we should be, have our awareness in the present moment, non-judgmentally. How do we get there? Right? Just knowing we should be doing it doesn't necessarily help in the moment that we're, you know, angry or afraid, because that's often when our emotions are really taking over not only our reactions, but our ability to think about our reactions, right? So what I talk about mostly with people about mindfulness is what's the training involved? And what does the science say about the best way to train to become mindful? And that is through mindfulness meditation, through sitting meditation, and doing it in a certain way. So a lot of our difficulties, just to back up for a minute, a lot of our difficulties arise really, especially now, you know, from like three kind of emotional cognitive interactions or experiences. One is we are resistant to what's happening right now. Something's happening in a way that we don't like it, we don't want it. And so we have the experience of that dislike or anger or frustration or fear or sadness. And then on top of that, we have this shouldn't be happening. I don't like this. And we can spin off into stories that compound that experience. Two, we can do all of that with something that has already happened. So we think about something that happened, we don't like the way it happened, and we go, and I remember specifically the first time I went, wait a minute, why am I sitting in this situation that happened? It wasn't fun the first time, and I keep going back and sitting in it. When it's not happening right now, it's not happening right here, and where I am right now is actually much more comfortable. So we often go back and think about things that have happened that we didn't like, that we had fear over, that we maybe have embarrassment about, whatever. And so we re-experience it, or we tell stories about what might happen. And we have a lot of anxiety and about a fear about what might happen. And we spin off into stories, and we can really start connecting to it as if it's real, right? So how can we avoid those three things? Well, those three things are kind of the three things that a mindfulness meditation practice will kind of work on, right? Will train us to avoid. But it's not just about knowing that we shouldn't do it, right? It's about training for it, and training for it in a certain way. Not all mindfulness teachers necessarily teach it with these components. So there are 5 components that I always talk about. Because for me, when I train people in starting a mindfulness meditation training, I want them to hopefully continue on. So I introduce them to teachers, usually MP3 downloads that are freely available on the internet, but teachers that I know cover these 5 parts, like activities of mindfulness meditation that really map to the brain workout that underlie the changes that we're hoping for, right? And so I teach them these 5, so I introduce them to some teachers, but then I tell them about these 5 components so that they can continue on, and hopefully it will become a lifelong process or practice, and they can explore and find teachers that they like, and they can look to see if these 5 things are covered. So the 5 things are a practice that at the base is a focus on the breath, right? The practice of gathering our attention over and over and refocusing on our breath. A lot of mindfulness practices kind of stop there. It's a starting point. It is a base skill that we have to build on.
It's also, not to interrupt, but it's also
please do.
interesting the connection that breath already has with us as endurance athletes, right? It's because we're dependent upon that breath. So there's that interesting overlap too. Sorry to interrupt. But
Yeah, and actually, as you interrupt, and please do interrupt, because he's really going to dive into a lot of this. And I think hopefully you and everyone else is seeing what she's discussing. If you were to replace the mental or mind side of this with the physical side, it's so intertwined. You know, focusing on the breath, especially as a swimmer. If you're an adult onset swimmer getting ready for your first triathlon, the most important thing I need to teach you first, how do you breathe? The most fear-inducing thing for most new swimmers is, I can't breathe. I'm out of breath. It spins out from there. So how do you focus on the breath to calm down? So the intertwining of the physical training and the mental training, you should see it woven through all of these 5 things that Michelle's going to hit. And starting with the breath, that's the foundation. You know, the basic tools, whether it's a mountain bike or a trail run or an ocean swim, we all start with this basic foundation. If you don't master this first component, you're not going to be able to maximize your performance, whatever that might look like, in a real actual race or dynamic massive challenge setting.
Yeah. You know, that was one thing I neglected in my introduction too, to highlight to our audience listening tonight, is that all of us as athletes, regardless of what level we are, we already have a lot of these tools, right? These skills within us as athletes that we're now needing to hopefully deploy in a different way, right? To deal with life. So that's why I think this discussion tonight is so relevant and needed for many folks. So what's step number 2?
And actually, it's a perfect segue, because even more so, step number 2 is sensory awareness, focusing on bodily sensations, both internal and external. And that's certainly something that athletes do, right? So we have to be aware of what our muscles are doing, what our arms and legs are doing. And so in sitting meditation, that becomes the next step, right? So the next skill is to focus on what is my body doing? And what happens when we become more aware, when we kind of become more centered in our body, we become actually less centered in our head, which is often the problem, centered in our thoughts. And there's a lot of other really kind of cool things that happen when we are really aware of our sensory signals as they actually come up into our brain, rather than kind of judging what's happening in our body without really being connected to it. So one of the cool things is that they find that when we are really aware of, say, our pain, the signals actually that get to the part of our brain that we really experience the pain, the signals are less, they're like dampened, right? So we actually experience less pain. We are also, and I see this a lot when people meditate the first time, we become aware that our pain comes and goes. So we can experience what feels like chronic pain, but the only time we notice it is when we have it. We don't notice it when we don't have it. And so one of the things that comes along with really being aware of what's happening in our body is we stop telling the stories about the pain. And I think pain is one of the main things that I think a lot of athletes and non-athletes, you know, the relationship with our bodies often, especially as we get older, can be a relationship in pain, and what our bodies can no longer do, or what causes more pain. And mindfulness meditation, when we become really much more connected to the actual sensory input, helps us to not weave stories through that sensory input that actually makes the experience of pain worse. And so that second step is to really connect to our bodies. And the good news with the breath and the body awareness is that we take those two things with us, everywhere we go. And so, so we can reconnect at any moment to the moment, because our bodies and our breath is in the moment, right? And it can, both of those things can take us out of our head when our head is being problematic.
Yeah.
And actually, to put it in context,
Go ahead.
It's like, she mentions pain, but that can also just be discomfort. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to live in the Bay Area where you guys are, and used to train with the Dolphin Club in San Francisco Bay. And I remember doing a 24-hour relay in February in San Francisco Bay at the Dolphin Club, and standing there at 3 a.m. without a wetsuit, getting ready to swim a mile when it's 48 degrees and the water's 49. That wasn't pain, but it was extreme discomfort, and not weaving a story around the fact that I'm really, really cold right now, but just being aware of it. Is it something I need to react to, or just it's just there, and it just is what it is at that moment.
And you figure out a means to deal with it, right? Right. You don't dwell on it, but you figure out how to compartmentalize it in some way that you're able to do what you've set out to do. It's there, but you're not going to let it stop what you're about to do. In fact, go for this swim. I had a question come through for you, Michelle, from Helen, who says, what are your thoughts around the different types of yogic breaths, and is there one you recommend?
Hi, Helen. Thanks for the question. And that's outside of my expertise. I would say I don't really know much about that at all. So there's not one I would recommend. That what I know with mindfulness meditation, that we use just the normal breath, that we don't breathe more or less, or we try to make it as natural as possible, that we just connect to what's naturally already happening.
Yeah. I am no yogi by any stretch of the imagination, but I have done yoga for the past 15, 16, 17 years. And we do Ujjayi breathing, deep belly breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth kind of things, just really trying to deepen and get a rhythmic type breath going to help calm yourself down, calm your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Do you want to move on to the third point?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So number 3.
Yeah.
is labeling our thoughts and emotions without interpretation or evaluation. Right. So the next thing is not only being aware of our breath and our body, but also our reactions to whatever's happening, our thoughts about them, our emotions about them. So metacognition is really, not to jump ahead, is like number 4, where we really start watching, stepping back and watching them. Labeling is really exactly what it sounds like. And it is the first step to identifying emotions, is to saying, and often we don't do this, most of us don't do it. I'm angry, I'm bored, I'm sad. And the crazy thing is, just labeling an emotion reduces physiological arousal. So just saying I'm angry actually will reduce the experience of anger. Saying I'm bored, well,
because I find out, right, if you don't label it, you hold it in, right? You're not expressing it. So sorry, I don't mean to jump in like that.
No,
please do.
jump in. That's what, because we want, we live this so much that it's always refreshing for us, and I think insightful and helpful for everyone else. Since normally we would be doing this in a room with 50 or 60 other people right there live, getting your questions may allow us to better hit something that might be a question someone else is having.
Yeah. Or just, it's, I think it's helpful for all of us when somebody takes something and connects it to their own experience. So.
Yeah. Well, speaking of questions, and before you get to your next points, I had another one come in, and I'm going to say this person's name incorrectly, so I apologize. I think it's Bellin or Beline. They say, I use the Headspace app before swims. Do you recommend any other similar type apps?
I haven't really looked into apps. Mostly because they cost money, and coming from a social welfare perspective, and also mindfulness meditation is really based in the Buddhist Vipassana tradition, and so making things freely available to help anybody, regardless of resources, is something that I'm a huge fan of. And so there are meditation teachers who post MP3 downloads of their guided meditation classes online for free. One of the UCLA has a mindfulness center. It's a research center, and they also do regular podcasts that are also for free. So there's tons of free resources out, and I can certainly send a list to Yuri to post of teachers that are cover these 5 things in their teaching practice, maybe not all in one sitting, but they cover them all, and B, are free. And
let me
that would be, I'll go. That would be awesome, because I can go back after this episode and post those in the comments for folks to find. So yeah, we can follow up with that. Go ahead, Bruckner.
Yeah, and specifically because you're talking about swimming and before a swim workout, I think that my mindfulness meditation practice is based on what Michelle researched, and it was a sitting guided mindfulness meditation session that lasts between about 25 to 35 minutes. It's a guided mindfulness meditation. I have a teacher that I really like, and a guided session that I listen to all the time, on the plane, in airports, at home, in the mornings, all the time. And rather than listening to it like right before a swim, what I find is in my swim practice, when I'm in pools, I do a mile time trial every Friday. It's just my thing. It's like I get in there and I crank out a mile. It's a great way for me to kind of see where I am. And what I found was, if my mindfulness meditation practice is wired in, and I'm going into this time trial maybe a little tired or fatigued, or before the practice, it's like I get like 500 meters into it, and we're talking a 25-minute, a 20-minute little session. I get distracted. I'm like, oh, I don't feel good, or I'd go back to something that happened earlier in the day, or I'd go back to the swim from last week that went really badly, and I'd spin that. And all of a sudden it's 300 meters later, and I just lost all this time. But this mindfulness meditation practice, when I was sitting down at least 4 times a week for this 30-minute practice, I carried that training into every session, not just the one that I did it right before, but it stayed with me throughout all of it. So it's kind of like not just going out and running a mile, but your ongoing run training enhances everything that you do all the time. And I think that is, while there may be value in an app like Headspace or something, for 5 or 10 minutes before you get into the water to kind of help you focus, and if it helps you put aside the work that you just left or family or whatever and gets you ready for that session, that's great. And what we're talking about is an ongoing practice, and that's what I can speak to, is that I see that impact in every session, and it carries on for years. But if I also stop doing it, I detrain my mind the same way my body does. I see those thoughts and fears creeping in. I don't label them as quickly, and they impact, more of my workout than they would have if I was really dialed in with my mindfulness meditation practice.
Did you have to, 25 to 30 minutes is a long period of time for folks to sit still. Did you have to build up to that? Did you slowly build, or did you just jump right into 25 or 30-minute sessions?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I can tell you from my experience, when Michelle said, well, keep in mind, I'm an endurance athlete. If you tell me I need to go ride 100 miles, I'm not going to build into it. I'm going to go ride 100 miles. If someone told you you're going to go do 24 hours of Canaan, you're not going to start off with doing 2 hours of Canaan. You're going to go do 24 hours. So it's like, if Michelle was telling me do 25 to 30 minutes. And so I had this podcast, and I said, I'm going to sit down for 25 or 30 minutes. And it was tough the first time. I fell asleep. I got distracted. I'd hear something, but I worked through it. I also learned in that practice that it's okay to fail at mindfulness meditation. It's okay to fall asleep that time, or to get distracted, or the dog's barking or something like that. That's okay. But that 25 to 30 minutes, I stuck with it. And really, how many times do you get to sit on the couch for 30 minutes and actually get better at your chosen athletic endeavor?
I would also imagine that before we get back to Michelle, that mindfulness transfers over into your daily work life too, not just your workouts, which I think is probably more relevant to folks right now because our athletic lives have been so disrupted, but that we really need this for our lives outside of our athletic pursuits too.
Well, doing a mindfulness meditation practice right before a podcast, we both highly recommend.
I did not meditate before this, so please excuse my behavior. Yeah.
But Michelle,
Well,
Michelle, you were going to say something.
Well, yeah. So it is really the 25 to 30 minutes per session. People really, it sounds awful, and it's kind of funny because, you know, as you mentioned in your introduction of me, I started studying mindfulness meditation as a researcher to use with kids in the juvenile justice system in 2008. I didn't start practicing it myself until 2014 because I was like, yeah, I'm not sitting for 30 minutes. I knew everything about it. I knew how good it was. And I was like, yeah, it's not happening. Like there's no way I can do that. And then actually I spoke at a conference that was a mind body. I don't remember, it was in 2014, but it was there. So it was an unusual academic conference in that they had like all the academic sessions, and then they had meditation sessions with all these amazing, like well-known meditation teachers. And I went with my sister, and I did my little presentation on Sunday, but we were there from Friday. And I think I went to one academic session because I was like, all these, so we went to meditation sessions, and that kicked it off for me. We went like a couple times a day for the 3 days because I wanted to see these teachers. And that's how it started. I was sold on it when I started seeing changes in my own reactions to things. I remember the time that we were having conflict because we're married.
Yep. Everyone does. Yep.
Everyone does.
And go ahead and share. I mean, this is really important, and this personal side of it, I think, is really important for us, and I think for others as well. So yeah.
But I remember the first time that it worked then, that I was about to say something, and I said, I'm really angry. And I don't even think I said it out loud, but I was like, oh, yeah, I'm really angry. I don't want to say anything. And it was the first time I really saw it work in the heat of the moment. I also remember the first time when we were sitting down to meditate together, or no, it wasn't together, but that doesn't matter.
But we do meditate together
occasionally. We were having conflict. This is like months later. We don't have conflict that often. And I sat down to meditate, and I was like, and I was angry. And I started meditating, and this is where that metacognition piece, which is number 4, really comes in. Is I was, listening to my teacher, and then there was silence, and then I would start thinking about what was making me angry, and I'd be angry, and then he'd say return to breath, and I would start breathing, and then I would realize, I'm not angry. When I'm focusing on my breath, I'm not angry. So how real is this emotion? If I can forget about it and then it's gone. And that was also a big, like a moment that, again, I was totally sold on it. I was like, I have changed my relationship with the way my mind works, with my emotions. And that was the whole point. That was what I wanted, was to be able to act, not react. And it was allowing me to act, not react when I wanted to react, when I forgot everything else except for wanting to react. And I think that's human, wanting to react instead of act. But so that metacognition, that 4th piece, is also part of what a good meditation teacher will train you in. It's like, what are you thinking? Is it good? Is it bad? Or really more like, what is the emotional flavor of it? Is it positive? Is it negative? Are you trying to make something good happen? Are you trying to avoid a negative thought? Like, what is your mind doing? So that, again, it gives you that distance, like the distance from the emotions. that it's the thoughts and the emotions are just things happening. They're not necessarily me that I have to be connected to and do something about. I know a lot of people struggle with their thoughts about things. And it's, you know, athletes
we feel guilt around our thoughts sometimes, right? Yeah, for having these kind of thoughts. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have never, and I think the mindfulness meditation, especially when we were in the thick, you know, in May, April and May, when all of the pandemic and the quarantine, and we were not leaving the house. I mean, we're together all the time. We were both working from home. We couldn't go anywhere. And not once did I ever regret, or that 30 minutes is almost always the best part of my day. Not once did I ever finish that 30-minute session and not feel better, because I would, you know, sit down angry or frustrated with something Michelle did or something I did, but not once did I ever finish one of those sessions and not come away feeling better, feeling more capable of dealing with whatever came next. And there was a time there where, and still each morning, what's it going to be now? I mean, what fell apart while we were sleeping that now the entire world has changed this morning? And that 30 minutes, not once have I ever come out of that 30-minute meditation practice and not felt more prepared for anything that came, whether it was a wave or something on NPR.
So I just want, the challenge of the sitting for 30 minutes is the central to a lot of the difficulties I have with the mindfulness practices that are out there, because when that are 10 minutes or 5 minutes, because the fifth component that is really probably the most, it builds on the others, is sitting is the opportunity to practice self-regulation, to sit long enough that we get bored and impatient and we want to get up. And this is why. Part of, so we return to the breath over and over. We remain aware, we become aware of our bodily sensations. We label our thoughts. We're doing all of this during meditation. That's what the training is. So sitting long enough that we get bored and we don't want to do that anymore gives us the opportunity to stay seated when we don't want to, and return to the breath and return to the physical sensations. And that practice, that conflict of, I want to get up. In fact, I want to scream because I'm so bored. But instead, I'm going to return to the breath. That conflict is maybe the most important piece to the practice, because it is training a part of our brain that controls our emotional reactions, that controls a lot of our behavioral reactions. We have a gas pedal and a brake pedal in our prefrontal cortex, and that conflict over and over and over of wanting to get up and not getting up gives us the opportunity to practice going towards a goal, putting the gas towards the goal-directed behavior, whatever it is that we want to do, and putting the brakes on what we know we shouldn't do, but we do want to do, right? So we want to meditate because we know it's good for us. We want to do another, swim another mile, run another mile, whatever, but we don't want to. But putting the brake on stopping and putting the gas on continuing our goal-directed behavior, like we do that over and over during meditation if we sit long enough. We also see how our brain works if we sit long enough. We get the practice of labeling our thoughts and emotions if we sit long enough that's all we're doing. People sometimes ask, do you have to, should your eyes be closed or open? I usually close my eyes because that makes it just that much harder. And this is training for me. I don't want easy training. Like I don't want to do something that's not going to get the results that I'm looking for. And so all this is that gets the results that we're looking for. None of us have extra time to do things that are going to get us where we want to go. So time is another important resource, which is why I do talk about these 5 things, because I have difficulties with any kind of treatment or practice or anything that is going to waste people's time. Like I wouldn't, if somebody wants to run a marathon, but only wants to walk around the block a couple of times a week, I would say, well, then that the running marathon is probably not for you. So
that actually is a kind of a segue into our next question here from JC. He says, what are your thoughts of meditation after training, as if cooling down after a lifting session or something like that? Do you ever meditate after training? Any thoughts on that, either one of you?
I think for me, I think the timing of it, I'll meditate at different times. I meditate a lot on long flights, when we're still able to do those and flying and stuff. Anything where I expect to be in a high stress, anxiety kind of situation, because while there's, for me, an ongoing impact of the practice, there's also an immediate impact of I feel better. And I think that especially, I've come back from workouts, and it's probably not unique to the ocean, but just to draw from this analogy, whether it's a weight session or a training session that JC is talking about, if I come out of a workout and it just, like I went out the other day and I mistimed, the wind changed when I was out there. So I thought I was going to go out and cruise through a few miles on a surf ski, and I turned around to come back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I did not need another battle. So for 45 minutes that was supposed to be 30 minutes, I'm fighting into this 15-mile-an-hour wind, chop. It's just chaos. And I'm like, this shouldn't be happening. I don't want this. Why is this going on? All of the stuff that should have come up in what Michelle just described. I was so caught up in that. So I come back from that and it's like, you know what? This is a good time to meditate, come back to the breath, because I saw myself spin out of control and spin up during this session. So obviously I need to recenter and refocus. I need to get back to the basics. I need to get back to number 1.
Yeah, focus on the breath.
Yeah.
Which is probably a really good reminder for everyone, right? Because I would imagine most folks are feeling a lot of anxiety right now. I know I am. And because so many things are out of our control, right? The only certainty in 2020, right, has been the uncertainty right now, which creates a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety for people. Homeschooling adds a whole nother layer to folks' lives. So yeah, the breath, I think if anybody takes anything away from our chat tonight, it would be go back to number 1, right? Tap into the breath. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to say that 15 minutes of mindfulness meditation is a waste of time. It's not. They do find that in like about the first 15 minutes, physiological arousal drops, stress and anxiety drops. And that's the case with most types of meditation, that you're going to really have that calming. It's the other self-regulation stuff, the application outside, outside of sitting that they find with the longer time of sitting is what you're going to be more likely to get to those other broader goals.
And I would suggest too, you can, if the goal is 25 to 30 minutes, if the goal is to run a 10K or to swim your first 10K, but right now you can't run that far, it's not a bad thing to necessarily to go out and walk and run around the block.
Right.
Start where you are.
Absolutely.
With a clear vision of where you want to be.
Absolutely.
And now the knowledge, both the science and hopefully the anecdotal side of it, of these are the benefits. Right. So if 30 minutes is just beyond where you are right now, then do 5, do 10. Just tell yourself, you know what? It's 5:47 in the afternoon and I can sit down for 5 or 10 minutes. And maybe you sit down for 5 or 10 minutes and then realize, okay, this is a great window that I could actually stretch into 30 minutes.
Right.
Start with where you are with a vision and knowledge of the benefits of what can happen if you get to where we're talking about.
And as an adjunct to that, I can just read here some of the benefits that have been really well supported in a bunch of research. That mindfulness increases a sense of well-being, regulation of emotions and behavior, attention, self-awareness, self-esteem, and sleep quality. It also decreases anxiety, depression, anger, worry, pain, cortisol levels, binge eating, and a bunch of other like more the semi-compulsive behaviors.
It sounds like those were written with COVID in mind.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
I
and
mean, I joke, but not really. I mean, those are
Yeah.
all the things that people are experiencing right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Because one of the worst feelings in the world is, this is happening, I can't handle it, and there's nothing I can do about it. I can't change it, right? But that's exactly the moment that this training has can get us to, like, yes, that is all true, and that's just all true.
and yeah, and to share, I mean, just from our story as well. I mean, we actually just moved to a new home, like in the middle of COVID and all this. We had to move to a new place. You know, stuff had happened with the old place, and we had to move. Like another stress, and we were both like we needed this. Like we even had the capacity to deal with this. You know, we're working from home, and now we don't have a safe home, and now we need to find a safe home. I mean, like, it really felt like it was absolutely, we felt hopeless. I mean, it absolutely felt like hopelessness. But much of that was an emotion, and where we are now is better. And it turns out we were able to deal with the facts of the situation, but the emotion side of it really is what was going to destroy us. And that was the scary part. And just focusing on the facts of this is what we need to do to create a safe place to then move forward and achieve what we need to achieve. Work, personal, athletic, whatever it might be.
Yeah. I mean, we only have about 10 more, 15 more minutes here. So I'm wondering, is there anything still part of your presentation, Michelle, that we should touch on, you know, in regards to mindfulness meditation that will help folks navigate our current world, that translates into what folks are dealing with out there right now?
You know, when I work with people who are who would like to start a mindfulness meditation practice, is I usually start by having them plan 2 30-minute sessions a week during the week, and to think about it like, instead of, you know, not that, and I know this isn't the truth for everybody, but like, it's the length of a sitcom, right?
Yeah.
So you know, half of a Law and Order.
Yeah.
So, and that it's hard at the beginning, and it's uncomfortable at the beginning, but you know, like talking to athletes, it's almost like it's an easier sell, because I know that athletes are like, yeah, okay, discomfort, I can do that. You know, it kind of sucks at the beginning, I can do that, you know, and so that's so athletes actually are probably a group that more easily can adopt a mindfulness meditation practice. So just, I say, start, you know, first 2 weeks, do 2 sessions a week. The third week, add a session. And if you can get up to like 4 sessions a week, that's awesome. I mean, really, the more the better. You know, at this point, you know, and when I started, like I said, like I put it off for literally years. Like my whole goal was like not to get up. I didn't like, that's all. And then it was not to shake my foot the entire time. And I thought I was like really getting good at it. because I didn't do because I'm a shifty person. Well, like I move a lot.
Fidgety.
Fidgety, that's it. I was like, shifty's not quite the right word. And I thought I was getting good at it, and it turned out I was just falling asleep. But eventually, you know, it gets to where like I sit down to meditate, and it's an immediate relief. Like laying down in bed after a really hard day, you know, it's like, you know, and so just, you know, it increased gradually.
Do you always meditate at the same time of day, or does it vary for you? You know, is it like part of like your daily training schedule? Like you're always at 7 a.m. in the morning, or does it sort of depend?
So for much up until this year, it was just like whenever I could. And if by bedtime I couldn't, I did it at bedtime. Then this year, as a New Year's not resolution, I guess, a plan, I decided I was going to get up early and meditate before anybody else in the house was awake. And I did that for about 6 months, and maybe 6 months. And it was awesome. And it really brought everything like to another level. But now I'm back to catch as catch can, because we're adjusting to a new environment and everything.
And I'll tell you,
go ahead.
I grab it whenever I can as well. And it's been a pretty chaotic couple of 3 weeks for us as well. And just being exhausted as well. But I will tell you, when I travel a lot, and like you, I'll travel and I'm either doing talks or presentations, or it's an event, and I spend a lot of time in Australia or American Samoa. If I'm on the road traveling and I want some sort of semblance of routine, because I don't know when I'm going to be able to work out, I don't know what's going to be normal, my habit on the road is I get up really early, 5:30, 6 a.m. I grab a stroopwafel, little product placement, and then I meditate. That is how I start every morning. If I'm overseas or if I'm traveling where I've got to be on and I'm doing a lot of stuff, every single morning, that is my routine. And it sets me up to deal with the absolute uncertainty of what's going to happen today. So I think that, you know, like I would go and race this event in Australia. It was a pretty big deal. And I was doing a lot of stuff around that event. Every morning when I got up, spent 30 minutes meditating, and then moved on with the day. I even did that the morning of the event and got up even earlier, because I knew I needed to make good decisions, not knowing what I was going to get hit with, you know.
Yeah, I know when I was able to practice yoga, my favorite time of day was 6 to 7 a.m. because I found that it helped ground me, calm me, sort of clear my mind of any of these emotions or bad thoughts I may have been having, and set me up to have like the best day possible. It was a really wonderful way to start my day. So yeah, I guess, you know, people, like you say, will need to fit it in when it works in their lives. But I found starting my day with a yoga practice, a vinyasa yoga practice, really helps sort of ground me for the day. And vinyasa is all about the breath, the Ujjayi breath. So yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
So any sort of like final takeaways or thoughts that our audience can glean from tonight that will help them navigate, you know, our year that we're having so far?
You know, I guess the one thing that pops into mind that has become easier for me through this practice is to remember that, and my favorite teacher says is, everything is a process of change. That often one of the problems that we have is that we react to things as if it's always going to be how it is right now. And remembering that everything is a process of change, good, bad, or indifferent, helps me to sit through that. This is unbearable and there's nothing I can do to change it. Okay, that's what it is right now. And it will change. You know, yeah. It will change. And so sometimes for me, the best thing I can do is just wait for it to change. You know, that I don't always have the answers and how it should look anyway. But that everything is that. So that's one of kind of a mantra for me when when I'm dealing with things, COVID, having to move in the middle of a pandemic, anything that this too shall pass, everything is a process of change. Maybe the best thing I can do is wait. Sometimes it's do something, and sometimes it's wait.
Yeah.
And I'll put it.
Wait 1 second. Sorry. We had a question come in from Tesla. She says, with meditation, do you try to clear your mind or hone in and think about what your body is doing?
So I focus on my breathing, literally like in, out, maybe counting, or if, what's my body doing? How does the chair feel? Usually it's, how does my hip feel? Am I having pain? What does that pain feel like? So it's really just in the natural, like what my body is doing already.
And with the teacher that I listen to, a lot of times I'm an observer to what's going on in my brain. So I'm an observer to the thoughts that kind of come and go. I'm kind of a detached, non-engaged observer to what's going on. So I'm aware of the thoughts, the fear, the discomfort, the hip, the back, the whatever it might be. But I'm kind of removed from them. I'm just seeing them as transitory, that they will come and they will go. And that doesn't mean that we both don't come out of a meditation session with clarity on something that we were, an issue that we were facing or a problem we had with work or whatever, that clarity of mind of not getting caught up in the story and just being an observer will have a positive impact on, things outside of it. So not necessarily dwelling on it or focusing on a problem or a thought, but letting that kind of wash through and not becoming too emotionally tied up in it. Yeah. And I think that, to also kind of put this too will change, this will adjust. And I think that, the hardest thing, and I've seen this, we started off the pandemic in April and May and all the races went virtual. So now you can do a virtual race and now you can, do it virtually and log your time. And that lasted a while. And then it's like, okay, I cannot do another virtual race. Or now I miss my
community.
Peers. I miss my community. I miss we were able to still do our ocean training sessions, which, we realized became such an important thing to the, 50 or 60 people that joined us every Sunday, because, the ocean's a very distancing sort of thing. Once you're out there, you're kind of spread out and we're out on the beach. But I didn't realize until people started sharing later on how important that time was for them to reconnect, and that, I really got to see firsthand that the lack of so many things that we were so used to being gone, and then trying to provide people, trying to be some sort of light or some anchor to give them some normalcy or some way to connect. I think not only does the mindfulness meditation help me as far as take care of myself and my own training and all that, but it put me in a better place to help these other people that were also struggling. There's a quote that a lot of people have heard that, be kind because we're all fighting a great battle. And I think that the mindfulness meditation, if I'm in a better place, I'm in a better position to serve and help others as well. And I feel that as a waterman, that's kind of my job. I get to be an athlete, but the important thing to me is, what do I do for the oceans and what do I do for people to help them enjoy some of the feelings that I get to have?
Oh, that's so powerful and impactful, and I think a really good place for us to bring this to a close tonight about kindness. We all could use more kindness in the world today, and
Sure.
I really want to thank you two for sharing your expertise and your passion and your knowledge with our audience, and I hope that it has helped our GOO crew who is watching virtually tonight. Maybe give them some tools and skills, mental tools and skills to help navigate these tricky waters that we're all dealing with, and hopefully feel a bit of that sense of community that you're lucky to still be able to nurture in person out on the beach. But hopefully this community here is feeling some connectivity through our chat tonight. So thank you, Bruckner and Michelle. I'd like to remind our listeners that tonight's episode was sponsored by Jackrabbit. And if you use the code FUEL25, you will get 25% off your next order. Be sure to tune in next week when I will be talking with a bunch of our pro athletes who are also pro parents. So yeah, right? They've been homeschooling while also trying to maintain a life as a pro athlete. So thanks again, everyone. Thank you too for your time. I wish you well. I hope you're safe out there, that Hurricane Sally doesn't hit you too hard. And until we get to be together again in person, thank you for watching the ABCs of Sports Nutrition. I will see you next week. I'm Yuri Oswald signing out.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.